Guys, this is Edgar Garcia once again. This is Fresh News. You're watching Fresh News, and if you haven't liked my page on Facebook or push subscribe on YouTube, please do. So what I want to talk is about this thing called patriotism. Nationalism. We live in a time that we consider nationalism something equal to being a Nazi, or which stands for hate. I really want to break down that type of stereotype or that kind of narrative that we have for nationalists. The reality is that nationalists are actually good for a country. Gandhi was a nationalist. Even the current president of Mexico, he's a nationalist. And there's nothing wrong about being a nationalist. Nationalist is something that help preserves a nation. And the purpose of a nationalist is to help preserve the culture, the traditions, the values of a country. And because I believe that culture, values, and traditions actually helps a country be successful in having the right type of government and the right type of economy, many times as well it's really beneficial for a society. So it's really good for us to have this sort of nationalism. I did make a video about this in another video. It is called the video is nationalism, anti-immigrant, and an anti-minority ideology. And I pretty much bring in some points of how nationalism, it really depends on the type of country and what type of values that they have, if they will be inclusive to other minorities and other immigrants. I did, however, point it out that it's also very good to be very, very hesitant and be very careful about who we let in a country, because the reality is that not everybody that comes into the country is going to be able to assimilate. It's really good to also bring a limited amount of numbers of immigrants at certain times, and perhaps even raise up. There could be a times when we can bring a lot of immigrants, and there could be a time period where we can bring less immigrants. But that's really up to the nation of how they'll be able to manage in order for them to preserve a country. I don't believe that I'm not one of those, because it would be hypocritical, because my heritage is not American, it's Mexican. So it would be pretty hypocritical for me to say that I don't want no immigrants, because then I wouldn't be here, because my parents came here, as immigrants. So the thing that I do want to talk about is another thing is that I believe is important. And nationalism is adapting, it's adaptation. Like you're adopted to a nation. That's what an immigrant, you are adopted into a nation. So therefore you have to preserve the values and traditions of that country you reside in. But if you go to the dictionary, there's two types of nationalism. One is the patriotism, and like I said, it's really about the boundaries, the geographical location, and preserving that area. There's another group. This is the area where this is the type of nationalist that kind of gives a bad rep and a bad reputation, and they're the separatist movements. They believe in segregation. They're separatist movement, and you have a lot of those in Eastern Europe, specifically around the area of Russia. And they're unwilling to live and live side to side. With each other. They're not. They usually like to, and you have a lot of those in Africa as well. A lot of different tribes are not able to mingle and have. There's a lot of disputes. Many times it leads to wars, and I really want a nationalist type of system in this country, but I want to avoid that type of nationalism, which is the separatist movement, which is the segregation. We don't want that type of nationalist. The type of segregation, the ones who believe in separating. So their type of nationalism, it's not really based on the geographical location, but it's by a group of people. It's by heritage. It's like their heritage makes it. Their heritage is what's more important to them, rather than preserving their culture, their values, and traditions. If you're not part of their heritage, then technically you're not one of them, and that's something that we're trying to avoid. I don't want that type of nationalist to ever come to the U.S. The type of nationalist that I believe is to preserve the cultures, the values, and traditions, what the founding fathers gave to this country. Those are the type. You know, I'm pretty sure the founding fathers didn't really think that, oh, they had the idea that, oh, I'm going to build a great country for the Chinese in the future, or for people that the Arabs or the Mexicans, because in that time the Mexicans didn't exist. But nevertheless, they did believe that all men were created equal. I'm pretty sure that their intention of creating the land of America was for their descendants, the descendants of British, the descendants of Dutch, you know, the Germans, you know, those were the ones that they thought that they wanted to pass the baton on to, you know. However, even in those times, there was a group of Englishmen, colonists, that believed that African Americans should also be part of this new American society. But there was a lot of disagreements between slave states and free states. But pretty much what I'm trying to say is that the type of nationalism that I'm trying to preserve is the one that preserves the culture, their values, their traditions, because it has been helpful for America. I don't want the separatist movement. I don't want the segregation type of nationalist. Hitler, for example, I refer to him as globalist, because he wanted to expand that belief around the world, and he, in a managed way, he did. You know, I mean, this Nazis, they're pretty much in a lot of Western countries, you know. But Hitler had a globalist mindset. Many people be like, "Oh no, he's a nationalist." You know, I disagree. He was a globalist in sense. Yes, I mean, he did in the name of national socialist, but in a way, he was a good globalist, and because he expanded his region beyond Austria, beyond Germany. So he had a global ambition. Some people try to say that, oh, well, I mean, he was only trying to unify all the Germans people but Poland is not, they were not Germanics. They were not German people. They were, descendants of Slavs. They were Slavs, and they were not Germans. There was a group of Germans there. Yeah, there was some, group of Germans that lived there. Just same thing as Czechoslovakia, but Czechoslovakia and Poland were not technically a country that was, technically ruled by Germans. They weren't. They really weren't the Germanic tribes from there. It was the other type. I mean, the only thing that they had in common was that they looked, they were white, and they were Europeans. Other than that, they were not the same. But Hitler believed in getting those lands because he felt he was the rightful owner of Poland and Czechoslovakia, because if a group of Germans lived there, then that has to belong to Germany. And that's pretty much what Hitler wanted to do, And I think the separatist movement, that's what their main goal is. It's more about separatists, separating themselves. Sometimes it's really for a good cause. Sometimes it's because of the way they're treated as a minority, so therefore they want to create their own kind of like the Uyghurs in China. I mean, they want to separate themselves from the way the Chinese treats them. And sometimes it's not always because they're bad people. Sometimes it's because of how the government views them, and they want to have some freedom, like the Kurds. I think you have to see that the Kurds in Iraq and Syria and from other parts, they're completely different. I mean, the Kurds in Iraq, perhaps they're doing it for protection because they were being persecuted by Saddam Hussein, and perhaps the Kurdish in Syria are a little bit more rebellious and they just want to go against Assad. It really depends of who you ask, because not all the Kurds are the same. But that's the type of that's the type of separatist movement, this nationalist, that I'm trying to avoid, and I'm not trying to promote that type of nationalist. There's some people that take it to a far extreme. They make it more racially, which is, they shouldn't even make it racially. It's more about color, and that is like white nationalists or black nationalists, and they have this white supremacy or the black supremacy, and then black supremacy originated because of the way they were treated after so many years, and after being colonized in Africa and being slaves in the New World from the U.S. all the way down to Brazil. They created this thing called a black supremacy. It was in a way of being recognized that we are better, we are equal, we are mistreated by the white man because we were put down for so long, and because they feared us, and they built this in a way, instead of bringing unity and fighting, they fight evil with evil. So it's pretty much the same thing. So we have white supremacy, we have black supremacy groups, and and it's very, very wrong how they see it, because they believe that their heritage is all the same, ignoring the fact that not all Europeans, not all people, the descendants of Europe, have a same type of culture. You have Latin, you have Slavs, you have Germanic tribes. I mean, like people who have the German descent, which is the Nords, from England, Scandinavia, Celtics or Celtics, however you want to refer to them. Many of them are mixed with Nords, so I'll just link them up with Nords. But the Greeks, there's Greeks. Not all of them are the same. There are many groups. And even in Africa, you have people from Central Africa, West Africa, East Africa. And when they came to the New World, they created a new culture. You see, even the African Americans are completely different from the Caribbeans. And the Caribbeans and the African Americans are completely different from the Black Latinos. So they have this kind of mindset of, oh, we're all black, we're all white, and that's pretty, that's there's nothing in common with them other than the fact that they all look the same, But unfortunately, we have, based on this country with the one-drop rule, this would kind of divided these type of ideologies, because the reality is that not all white culture is the same. I mean, they have similar. I mean, they have more things in common than Africans do with each other, but at the end of the day, it's really diverse. I mean, if you go to Africa, there's groups where they've been Christian. The Ethiopian, they've been Christians for a very long time. As a matter of fact, they were the first church before Constantinople, made Christianity the religion of the Roman Empire. But there's also a lot of regions where there's Islam, and Europe is predominantly Christian. The authentic ethnic groups of Europe, they're all Christian. Protestant or Eastern Orthodox or Catholic. But there is a group of authentic Europeans that are Muslim. They are minority. They're from Bosnia. They're Albania. So I don't like this kind of nationalism, of white nationalists and black nationalists, when they try to make it seem as a race and try to promote this type of because the reality, it's a flawed argument, because the reality is that they're not the same. They're all different, and the only thing that they have in common is the fact that they kind of look alike. But even within white groups and even within black groups, they actually look completely different. You got to think about it that in many African Americans are really mixed, and they have ancestry with whites, or Native Americans. There's some white people from the South that have ancestors from Native Americans, and even if you go to Europe, the southern part of Europe will look completely different from the Europeans of the north. Even in Africa, East Africa completely looks different from people from West Africa. So I think this is not something that I'm trying to lean towards. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be proud of who you are. You should be definitely proud of how you were made. If you were white, be proud of how you were. You were born white for a purpose. If you were black, be proud of being black. There's nothing wrong about that. I'm not saying that, there's nothing, and I'm not trying to also, I don't believe in forced segregation, and I don't believe in forced assimilation. I believe that as a country, we have a right to associate ourselves with anybody, and that's part of our liberty, that's part of our freedoms that we have in this country. But I don't like to push that type of nationalism. I think this is part 2 of the video that I made, and I was trying to get more and wanted to talk more about this. So if you guys like what I said, please push the subscribe button and like my page on Facebook. Thank you. You guys have a great day.